Good morning and good evening. This is Thomas Doe and this is my last video journal. For this video journal, I'm still gonna talking about the relationship between the disabled people and the normal people in real life. The reason why I'm still choosing this topic because before starting this class, I've already interested in that due to my mom's job and her work. So as I mentioned in my first video journal that according to the statistic data from the National Statistic Department of the People's Republic of China, that there are over 18 million people, disabled people in China, but only 6 million people were employed. And especially in this 6 million people, we don't really know whether they really have a job or just have a title on it. So and also on the street, when walking on the street, it's really hard for me to see at least like 2 or 3 disabled people working together. Even sometimes it's really hard to see one. That makes me to thinking about what causes disability people can't find a job and what makes them not willing to interact with the normal people. So besides the abilities that cannot afford them to work, in this video journal I'm mainly wanted talking about like the mentally and the physically reason of this socially phenomenon or social problem. So I separate this problem into 2 parts. First is mentally problem. So from the mental problem, I need to refer the theory from the symbolism, their tag theory. So from the tag theory, they mention in the chapter of crime, like people used to put many tags on the others, and especially in this chapter I'm talking about, they used to put many tags on disability people, such as slowly moving and they cannot really work as normal people, and sometimes even worse, they think the disabled people are stupid. For those people who don't really have a deeper understanding or at least some understanding of disability people, they will thus naturally have a form of impression which we call tags on this disabled people. So every times when somebody mention about disabled people, there will some tags will come out their mind naturally, like, oh, disabled people are really stupid, disability people is really slow moving, they cannot act as normal people, so we choose not to working with them, or sometimes even you are forced to working with them, you will choose to stay away from them. That is what I said the text doing, and the result or this process we call the unconscious stigma. So and from this perspective, that makes the disabled people not willing to interact with the normal people, and especially sometimes when they go find a job and the manager will think about, oh, they are disabled people, they cannot really work as we normal people doing. So they might be the reason why they refuse to hire the disabled people. But however, on some level, they can actually do the normal work as we normal people did. But just because of unconscious stigma, those employers and managers choose to not willing to hire them. Besides, from the chapter of sexuality or from the chapter of gender problems, some sociology thinks that the gender are formed by the society. I mean, the gender I said, or the gender is socially identified. Since before the civilizations were formed, there are no difference understanding between the men's and women's obligations and the responsibilities. But once the civilization reforms, like we know that in one social groups that they know man is stronger, so they are good at hunting things. They can catch the food, and women sometimes they are more details and physically a little bit weak than the men. So normally they will stay at home and do homework, do the houseworking things, and that is how what the socially identify means. Uh, but and that and the difference between the obligation understanding of men's and women the gender and it will naturally came out from different treatment, such as like the men the such as the men cannot go into women's bathroom and women's can't as well. But the one things we need to remind is that the different treatment doesn't mean that we need to have a discriminations on these different things. On this level, the phenomenon or the problem of disability people as same as the gender problems. So we know that sometimes the disabled people sometimes might act different from us, and sometimes we will treat them differently because sometimes we know that they are slowly moving, and on this time we will be really patient and let them doing things slowly. And sometimes they cannot figure out some math problems, and we will be patient and we will understand because they have different from us. But this different doesn't mean will bring discriminations. And that we need to think about, which is the different treatment doesn't mean the discriminations. So on this perspective, how do we solve this unconscious stigma? I think the unconscious stigma, no matter what, is from the less understanding for others, such as sometimes we think that guy is really stupid because we don't really know him. So I think the way to solve unconscious stigma is to bring the normal people or to bring the public have more understanding on the disabled people. Since when I in China, I'm already in China right now, but before I left China and going to America for my university college life, I've already been working in a disabled coffee shop for over 3 months, and what they did is on some level is the same as what we did in CSU cafeteria, which they hire the disabled people and to work there, but in that coffee shop that they also, but before they hire them as really officially worker, they will train them for making coffee or cleaning things. So in that coffee shop we will feel like there's no difference between us and them, disabled people, except that sometimes they really doing things a little bit slowly. But that makes me have more understanding than disabled people. But most of their disabled people are mentally disabled, not physically disabled. So as deeper understanding on them, the unconscious stigma will naturally move out, and that is, I think, how to solve that. But it's really a tough work because there's too many people, and the population of disabled people in China was large, and it's really hard to do. And the second part I think is the physically problems. The physical problems in for the disabled people in reality, I have two examples. One is a blind tracks, the setup of the blind tracks for disabled people on the road. it's really hard for me to see at one blind people actually working on that blind tracks. And sometimes a lot of that blind tracks were, broken, and nobody care about that. And beside that, and the second problem for disability people, especially the blind people, are the bathroom problem. Because the bathroom, they cannot really recognize which one is men's bathroom and which one is women's bathroom. And it is really the hard thing about, and it seems like nobody care about them, and it seems like they are invisible in this society. Even our government set up those things, but they don't really work. And from this perspective, for this problem, I need to refer the conflict theory from the chapter of urbanizations. The conflict theory thinks that those classes who have powers on some level, they will only fight for their own benefit. For this perspective, and we can understand that on this level, people will find out that those disability people has no power on this society. They seems like invisible, like nobody care about them, which makes them which makes them can't really fight or have a voice for their own rights. I still remember that in the videos that post in the class, the 5-star community, in Denver, they fight for their community. Think the mayor of Denver think they need to gentrification in the 5-star community, but the residents think that they will hurt the poor people. At least on some level, those residents still can have voice from them. But in China, it's really hard to find out that there's someone in public saying fight for the benefits of disabled people. So on this problem, I think there is some what I call the socially segregation. As in the chapter of urbanization, there is a residential segregation, but here I need to make it worse, called socially segregation. Seems like in this society that the disabled people will only interact with disabled people, and normal people only interact with normal people. I mean, not all of them, but at most of them. And that makes me think about why didn't those disabled people choose to interact with normal people? And that we will bring back to the unconscious stigma. It's kind of like the ring of Mobius. And I still remember in the chapter of urbanization that the structural functionists, they described that our society as a huge super organ, like each part of our society just like a small organ in a huge body. And that makes me think about the relationship between the disabled people and the normal people is just exactly as the relationship in the organ. When one organ turns worse, and they cannot become better automatically, because it will cause another organ to be worse. And if there's nobody can stop it, it will become worse and worse and worse. That is what exactly the relationship between the disabled people and the normal people. Since normal people has no understanding with those disabled people, they choose to have a discrimination on them and have an unconscious stigma on them, and that makes people who has a disabled problems get hurt, and they will choose to not interact with normal people, and they will choose to stay in their own comfort zone and not interact outside. And this behavior or this process will make normal people become less and less understanding on disabled people, and thus have more unconscious stigma and discriminations on disabled people. And that is what I think, what I mean that the two organs become worse and worse. So for this perspective, I think we need to think about how to solve it is to bring the disabled people in public, but the way to bring them in public is what we need to think about, because we cannot hurt them, and to mention their hurts, like mention they have huge difference on us. We need to mention that we are same person and we are same human, but we just have a little bit different. That doesn't mean we are two totally different species and we need to hate each other or have discrimination things. So, but it's really a hard work in the future, and that is what I think, and that is my last video journal. Thank you.